The following clip is from the North to South Show, live every Monday and Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, where we talk SEC football everything. Now, we'd love to have you out for next show, but for now, hit that like button down below, hit that subscribe button, and enjoy this clip. Now moving on to something that's going to be a bit more fun and relaxing and everything like that, other than the last two segments, because obviously we're talking about the 12-team playoff and everything like that, and that gets what's more intense because a lot of people feel really passionate about how they think college football should be run and everything like that, but here in this segment, we're going to talk about what I think the SEC on CBS games will be, because we all know the SEC on CBS games are the best game of each week for the SEC. Anytime you just hear that theme music and everything, and I know it's going to go very soon because of the whole ESPN contract, but let's all enjoy and savor the couple years that we have left with the SEC on CBS. So I'm here to do my predictions today for week by week. What SEC on CBS games will we have? And some days there's obviously double headers. There are already a couple games that have been pre-decided. But for all the open slots, I have predictions. So it's going to be a great segment, guys. Let's start off with September the 18th. Obviously, SEC on CBS doesn't start till September 18th. And this game is already decided. Obviously, we already have Alabama at Florida. I'm pretty sure that's going to be a 3:30 game. The biggest cross-divisional game of the year. I don't think that anyone's going to have an argument with that. Obviously, the SEC championship last season, it's going to be a high-magnitude game. I think it would be a bit weaker if Alabama or Florida was traveling to Alabama, but the fact that you have Alabama traveling to the Swamp, it's going to be a great game. So nothing more to say about why this game was chosen, because it was already chosen. I can't change it, and I wasn't going to change it. Alabama, Florida is September 18th. September 25th. Interesting, very interesting week. I have my honorable mention of Tennessee versus Florida. I'm going to have honorable mentions for some of these for the less obvious ones. I'm going A&M versus Arkansas in Arlington for my CBS 3:30 game. We'll get to see how Texas A&M does early in the season before, obviously, the big Alabama versus Texas A&M game, and I think that Texas A&M is going to have a lot of media attention on them this year, so getting them in Arlington, obviously, this game's going to be played at Jerry's World, AT&T Stadium. And I think Arkansas could be a competitive team this year. This is an early season SEC showdown where Tennessee, Florida, obviously Tennessee's coming in with a new coach and everything, but you just showed Florida last week, and my prediction is that they lose that game. So I think Arkansas versus A&M will be the more interesting game, and obviously you play that game in a neutral site at the Cowboy Stadium. All in all, I think it just makes for a better storyline and everything like that. So I'm going September 25th. We are going to see A&M versus Arkansas in Arlington. October 2nd, this was a really, really tough one. My honorable mention was Auburn at LSU. I was really, really close to putting that one. And honestly, I kind of feel bad for not putting that one because I feel like I talk about this game too much. But I honestly think that it would be the best game of this week. Ole Miss traveling to Alabama. Obviously, we all know what happened last year. It was a very close and entertaining game. It's going to be a bit different when Matt Corral and Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss have to travel to Bryant-Denny Stadium. But still, I think that could be a really competitive game. Even though Auburn and LSU historically are always really, really close and entertaining games, excluding last year, obviously, because that was a blowout. I think that you go to Alabama because from what I see, there's only one other time that you're pretty much going to go to Alabama this season. So take your SEC on CBS 3:30 slot to Alabama to go see them play Ole Miss. And then Auburn LSU was a really, really tough choice. I would not complain if that was the CBS game that week either. October 9th, we get two games. We get the 3:30 game, and then we get prime time at 8 o'clock. So interesting here. 3:30 game, so the 3:30 game is obviously going to be the second best game of the week because primetime 8 o'clock is going to be your best game. They weren't tough choices at all. 3:30, I have UGA going to Auburn. Now, we all know UGA going to Auburn, that's a big rivalry game, and usually you see something crazy happen at Jordan-Hare, so I don't know how you pass up on that game. Georgia is coming in, obviously, as one of the college football playoff favorites out of the SEC this season. Auburn's coming in with the new head coach. It's going to be an interesting road test. Probably Georgia's first big road test that they go on. So it's going to be interesting there. Get them at 3:30, and then at 8 o'clock, of course, you're going to have Alabama, Texas A&M, probably the biggest SEC game of the whole season. So there's no further explanation needed on why that game is the 8 o'clock game. There's no further explanation on why UGA at Auburn is a 3:30 game. Take those two, 110%. I would bet some serious money that those are the two games on October 9th. October 16th, we also have an SEC on CBS doubleheader. This time we have a 12 o'clock game and we have a 3:30 game at 12 o'clock, so this will be the second best game. I'm going Ole Miss at Tennessee. An interesting game here, a game that you don't usually see that often. Ole Miss and Tennessee get each other in the rotating schedule, of course. Ole Miss traveling to Tennessee. We see how Josh Heupel does this season and everything at Tennessee. You got one of the best offenses in all of the SEC going with Ole Miss going to Tennessee, and obviously Tennessee is not an easy place to play. Just looking at all the other games, I think that this game just is interesting and intriguing just because this is an eye test game or an eye matchup that you don't usually see Tennessee and Mississippi going up against each other that often. So I think that's the easy choice to take at 12 o'clock. And then at 3:30, I got Florida going to LSU. Obviously the best game of the whole SEC last season. These are going to be two competitive teams this season, two very talented teams that just weren't able to finish it out last season. Obviously, LSU had a lot of a weaker season than Florida, but Florida was so close to making a run. But I think these are two very evenly matched teams, and that will be definitely the most interesting game. And of course, you go to LSU. I think that's the only game I got on here going to. That's a lie. This isn't the only game I got at LSU this season for the SEC on CBS slate, but I think that this will be definitely the best game of that week. October 23rd, I got an honorable mention of Tennessee at Alabama. I just think Alabama's going to run Tennessee out of town there, but it's still a rivalry game, still deserves a mention. I got LSU at Ole Miss. You're going to hear these two teams' names a lot, and I apologize, but they honestly just fall into weeks where their games are the best of the week. LSU at Ole Miss. This was a close game. I'm pretty sure this was like the last week or one of those makeshift weeks at the end of the season. It was a close game last year. Just there was no other game, and I feel like these are two evenly matched. These are two teams that are going to be duking it out for like the third or the second spot in the SEC West, so I don't see how you put any other game above that, especially when there's no really headline highlight matchup this week. So I think LSU at Ole Miss, traveling to Ole Miss, will be the best game of this week. October 30th, it's already decided, UGA at Florida. Don't need to talk about that. Obviously, the big game in Jacksonville. It's going to decide who wins the SEC East, so no further explanation needed there. November 6th, honorable mention of Mizzou versus UGA. I think Mizzou might be a competitive team this year. I think Mizzou might be able to give Georgia a scare. I'm not saying that Missouri will go out and win that game, but I think that they could make it a competitive game early. So that's a game to definitely keep your eye on, but all in all, I don't know how we don't go LSU versus Alabama. Last time they played in Alabama, LSU won. Obviously, lots of things have changed since then, but just seeing those two teams' logos in your commercial the week before or something like that just gets you pumped for the game, no matter who or what players are on that team. So I don't know how you don't go to LSU, Alabama there. November 6th, I think that's the easy choice there. November 13th, I have an honorable mention of Tennessee and UGA. I just think that again, is a game that you look at rivalries and everything like that. That's a good rivalry game. I still think Georgia is a way better team in this scenario, and they'll probably easily win that game. But my game for this week, I have Texas A&M going to Ole Miss. Again, two teams that you've heard a lot of so far. Texas A&M, this was the game that we missed out last year, and this was actually scheduled for an SEC on CBS game. I think COVID screwed it up and everything. I can't remember. I think it was Texas A&M who had the COVID issues. I could be completely wrong on that, but one of those two teams had COVID issues. Texas A&M, Ole Miss. Texas A&M could be going for an SEC West championship at this point, and traveling to Oxford, I think that could be a game that is stopping them in their way from getting to that SEC championship. Obviously, this all depends on what happens in that Texas A&M Alabama game, but I think that this is by far the best game of the week, especially when my honorable mention is just Tennessee at Georgia. This is going to be the most competitive game of the week. November 20th, we have an honorable mention of Arkansas at Bama, and I was close. I was really, really close to putting this as the game. But I was just like, I think Alabama's going to win this game too easily. So I'm going Florida at Mizzou. I think it's going to be a competitive game. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, Florida is coming. These are the two teams who I think either one of these teams is going to finish out as the second best team in the SEC East. I still think Georgia has got that number one top spot, and I just think it's going to be a competitive game. Obviously, it'd be a bit different if Mizzou was traveling to Florida, but Florida has to make the long trip all the way to Columbia, Missouri. Two offenses, two young quarterbacks going at it. I think it's going to be a very interesting game over there in Columbia, Missouri. So I'm going with that as the CBS game on November 20th. Oh, I also had another honorable mention for that one, and that was my Gamecocks taking on Auburn, and I just threw that in there because that is honestly the game even more maybe than the Clemson and Georgia game that I'm the most excited for. Just so many great storylines there. Mike Bobo coming back to South Carolina. Obviously, Tank Bigsby and Marshawn Lloyd going at it for the first time head-to-head, who are obviously two big recruits that South Carolina were going after. I know this isn't things that pop into your head for a average SEC fan, but for a South Carolina fan like me, this is a game that I am really, really excited for. And obviously, we beat them last year and probably our best game. Definitely our best game all of last season. So yeah, I'm excited for that one. I'm not saying that it's going to be in the CBS slot. Just had to shout that out. November 26th, we got Missouri at Arkansas. And this is a Friday night game. So November 26th is the Friday. November 27th is the Saturday. Missouri at Arkansas. You obviously saw the game last year. It was an amazing game. I'm guessing that this isn't going to be your main broadcast crew. Obviously, I'm talking about with Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson. I don't think that that's going to be this game. I think that they take the Saturday game, but I still love the idea and to have it on a Friday night and to CBS cover it. I don't need to explain this game because it is already chosen. November 27th. This was the really, really, really tough one. My honorable mention is the Iron Bowl. It sounds so whack, especially with Alabama going to Auburn. You know, that's always bound to be an amazing game, and it was so hard. But I was just like, this Texas A&M LSU game, I really, really feel good about. Going to LSU, it's going to be a great and competitive game, and I just feel like this will be the better game. I think Alabama's a better team than Auburn this year, although you can never count Auburn out when they're playing at Jordan-Hare. Just Texas A&M, LSU on paper to me looks so good this season, and I cannot wait for that game. I think it's going to be more competitive. And Jeff Lee, if you're trying to get the best game of each week, not necessarily the most eye-catching game, obviously you see Alabama and Auburn going at it, you're going to think, oh my gosh, it's the Iron Bowl, that has to be CBS. But if we're talking about best game, I think that Texas A&M LSU game is going to be a better game than Alabama at Auburn.